How's it going, everyone? My name is Nicolas DOSTAL. Very happy to be here tonight, speaking to you all. Just a few quick facts about me. I'm 24 years old. I live in Milford, Connecticut, but my whole family is originally from Košice, Slovakia. Some of my interests include being active and videography, and my professional interests include urban planning, international relations, and sports management. So for work, I'm a regional planner at the Metropolitan Council of Governments that's centered around the region in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And what I do there, I do transportation planning, economic development, and things around climate change. So to be a regional planner, you need a degree in regional planning, and I got my master's from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I did that after a bachelor's in political science and minors in sports management and sustainable community development. At the end of these studies, I got to present my thesis work at the 7th Fabos Conference in Budapest, and that's the work that I'll be presenting to you tonight. So to go back to the start, like I mentioned earlier, both of my parents are from Košice, and so most of my family is still there, and we go back every other year to visit. This has had a great influence on me as I've been able to compare how life is there versus how it is here. Whenever we do go back, we go back to Hlavna ulica, which is the main street. And this is one of the best examples of a pedestrian zone I've seen, and my research centers around pedestrian zones. What is it? A pedestrian zone is an area of a city that's blocked off to automobile traffic, and that frees up a whole bunch of space for people and bikes and all sorts of different activities that beforehand would only be dedicated to cars. And a great pedestrian zone is a great pedestrian zone because it's dense. That means that things are close to walk to, and there's a lot of attractions within a short walk away. There is ample transit, and you're able to get there without having to drive a car. There's consistent programming, which means the area is never boring. There's always something going on. There's always a new fair or festival to try. There's existing foot traffic. So these are places where people would come visit whether there's a pedestrian zone or not. And in the case of Košice, there's an intimate width and greenery. As you can see in the top picture over there, the wide street is split in two by a park, and it becomes that sort of close street in the bottom picture that is much more comfortable for people to spend time in. So my research centers around the 5 distinct types of pedestrian zones, the first of which is where you traditionally find pedestrian zones, which is the central business district. This is where the highest density of businesses and attractions are in the city, and it's also overwhelmingly paved and wide, which, like in Košice, you need to introduce a bit of greenery and different ways to section off the space to make it more inviting to people. In recent years, pedestrian zones have expanded into residential areas, and these places require a high degree of resident input and planning because these are their backyard, essentially. So it becomes a place for the children to play, for people to hang out after work, and it becomes an extension of their living space. The next is the transportation hub. This one you might recognize right outside of Grand Central. These are the spaces outside of train stations, bus stations, where a lot of different modes of transport come together. And in that transition, you need to leave on foot and make your way to the different form of transport. And this acts as a gateway to the rest of the city, usually pretty close to the central business district. The urban waterfront is located right on a body of water, and because of that, there's cooler temperatures. It's much more pleasant to spend time in, to do sports, to bike around, and so it becomes a destination for these kinds of activities. Also, because it's right along the water, a lot of flooding is to be expected, so you need to plan accordingly. That means putting in more greenery to soak up the water, or including a step design, as you see here in Sydney, that allows the water to come up but not all the way to the buildings. And the last one I'm going to mention is the educational corridor, which are children's walking and biking routes to school. There's a few now here in New York, in Queens, and These can also function as a schoolyard if they're permanently closed off. A great strength of these areas is that they're very flexible. They'd be closed off at pickup and drop-off times, or immediately right after school, or just used as a schoolyard during school, or as we've seen in Paris, France, just closed off permanently, and they become a new park for the community to enjoy. So what am I looking at next? I'm looking at these school streets that I just mentioned, as they've exploded in popularity worldwide, partially due to the institutions inherent within their planning. That's the school, that's the parent-teacher organizations, that's the parent advocacy groups that work to create a lot of change, and that flexibility I mentioned that makes it a lot easier to test out the school zone. And the other thing I'm looking at is how major sporting events can be a catalyst for lasting change. So they can create infrastructure, organizations, and procedures that last far beyond the event itself. That's it. I think I made time. Thank you all. I appreciate it.